In general, to now just claim Africa, just African, doesn't make any sense. Our culture is not just influenced by West African culture. Bits and pieces of our culture that we see in Jamaica right now are taken from these different people that came here. And they didn't just live separately. They may have started out that way, but they intertwined, they intermixed, they had babies together, they mixed cultures together, households are mixed. So the people are mixed. I don't want anybody looking at me and be like, mixed? Jamaican people not mixed, we're black. That's not what I mean. Ancestry-wise, we are mixed. So we're not going to identify with just West African culture. So why would we then claim just African culture?
Dog, so fuck up my big bumba clap, bumba. Yo, bumba clap, dog.
You know Jamaicans came from Africa.
No, we did not.
But you did come from Africa.
We did not come from Africa. Just keep to the side.
CJ, I know you like Nigerians.
Keep me away from this dirty Africa, man. I'll be from there. Dirty things, them. Have you seen what the food looks like? How can I be from Africa? I don't eat that dirty food, fam. Ugh, Africans, bro.
What's up, family? Welcome back to this channel. So listen, guys. Before we even start this video, I want to say something clearly. We Africans love Jamaicans, like genuinely. They are like a part of us that we lost, just in a different place. The Caribbean. Same spirit, same resilience, same energy. So I'm not even going to lie. This video of some Jamaicans saying they are not African, it's going to hurt a lot of Africans watching this, despite the explanations given. But let's not react too quickly. Let's watch this properly, understand what's being said, then I'll be back with my honest thoughts. Thank you.
Lennox Arthur, Rhino, he's Jamaican. And he's saying that those people in the Caribbean, they know for sure that they are Africans. So we're going to get into this today. So everyone that you know that's from the Caribbean and they're still indoctrinated by the colonizers' false version of history, I need you to tell them to come in here because we're going to get into this deeply today. And I promise you that without a doubt, you're going to walk away from here knowing that you are not an African. And Lennox, you got yourself a knuckle beating today. Get your fingers off of that keyboard and stop making those crazy comments in my comment section. I am spanking your knuckles right now. Let's get it. Before the colonizers came, 1492, we know who that fella's name was that sailed the ocean blue in 1492. They called him Christopher Columbus. He went into South America and the Caribbean. And from there, they began renaming people and the land masses that were there. Robbing and looting, stealing everything they could possibly steal, and giving everyone in the Caribbean a Caucasoid god to worship, saying that that god was actually going to save them. It was the Catholic Church that issued a doctrine of discovery, which allowed the colonizers to claim indigenous people's land and resources because they were non-Christians. Did you hear that? Religion was involved in you losing your land, losing your homes, being renamed all these erroneous names that mean nothing, and you're worshiping a false god that does not belong to you, that your ancestors did not worship. And everything they did in the Caribbean and South America, they did the exact same thing in the North America as well, which is the United States and Canada and Mexico. Let's continue. What was the name of each one of those islands before the Caucasoids came and changed all the names? This is the colonizer names for the different islands. This is the actual original name of the islands, and this is your identity, your tribe, your tribal affiliation that you belong to. You can clearly see that none of these say African, right? It says Arawak, Taíno, and Kalinago. What about Barbuda and the rest of these? This is their tribal affiliation. Which one says African? Moving right along, Dominica, St. Lucia, Martinique, all of them. Arawak and Kalinaga. I still don't see African. Barbados, Trinidad, and Tobago. Do you see African here? Neither do I. Hispaniola, also known as Haiti, and also DR, Dominican Republic. This is their nationality of origin, and this is what their islands were named. Do you see African on here? And you're Jamaican, and it says you're Taíno. And I know that some of the Jamaicans are Arawak. But do you see African on here? I don't either. Moving right along. We have these islands here. Do you see African? I don't either. Here are more. Do you see African on here? I don't either. The Caicos Islands. Do you see African? Here we are again. More of the islands. Do you see African? Yet and still, there's more islands. Do you see African here? And here's another. I think I went through all of the Caribbean islands. I still haven't seen African yet. And why haven't I seen African yet? Because before the colonizers, the term African did not exist. You were your tribal identity. Furthermore, when you call yourself an African, you're basically saying, hey, look, I am their prisoner of war, because they have pretty much X'd out your actual identity and they replaced it with African, color, black, Negro, all of these, Hispanic. These titles mean absolutely nothing to us. They mean everything to them because they've disenfranchised us. They've stolen our identity. Read it with me, Lennox, Mr. Rhino. These terms are applied to people who are prisoners of war. It's during wartime that they have assigned these titles to you. And these are prisoner of war titles. Do you get it? You are not an African. You're not a color. You're not a Negro. You're not a black. You're not a Hispanic. You are whatever tribal affiliation you have come from.
God, here we go. I know you're trying to take it.
There's ignorant Jamaicans. I'm not African, bro.
This is a few minute video, so you won't be able to hear what he said, but he was basically saying that all the Jamaican people that say that they're not African. So for example, if you go into a Jamaican person and said, what are you? Be like, oh, I'm Jamaican. Be like, oh no, you're African because, you know, you're black. Be like, no, I'm Jamaican because we don't fully identify with African people. They're just ignorant. And let me explain why I disagree with this statement. Obviously, we know that we are of African descent. But if you know the history of Jamaica, you know that its people are not just the descendants of the enslaved Africans that came. Our motto in Jamaica is out of many one people. This is so because of the history of Jamaica. People that you see in Jamaica now are the descendants of, yes, the enslaved West Africans that were brought here, the slave owners themselves from Britain and elsewhere, indentured laborers that came from India and China, the Taínos that lived in Jamaica before anybody else got there, the Irish that came at some point. I don't remember if it's indentured laborship as well, but the Irish came as well. So our people here, melting pot, mixture of all those different people that came to Jamaica at different times for different reasons. For Jamaican people in general to now just claim Africa, just African, doesn't make any sense. Our culture is not just influenced by West African culture. Bits and pieces of our culture that we see in Jamaica right now are taken from these different people that came here. And they didn't just live separately. They may have started out that way, but they intertwined, they intermixed, they had babies together, they mixed cultures together, households are mixed. So the people are mixed. I don't want anybody's looking at me and be like, mixed? Jamaican people not mixed, we're black. That's not what I mean. Ancestry-wise, we are mixed. So we're not going to identify with just West African culture. So why would we then claim just African culture? You're also making the assumption that everybody in Jamaica is of West African descent. Most of us are, of course, because the population was mostly slaves. But other people are not. Another thing as well is that we, personally, and I'm sure a lot of other Jamaican people, put in the comments if you agree, don't know much about African culture. We know the bits and pieces that are intertwined in Jamaican culture right now, of course. We know that where it's from, yeah. But African culture, and I know that there's many different subsets of African culture because it's a big continent, right? But especially West Africa, because that's where most of the slaves came from that came to Jamaica. We don't know anything about that. We don't know anything about the culture back in Africa. So why do we then claim to be African? I am of West African descent, yes, but I'm also of Scottish descent, right? Someone else may be of Indian descent and West African descent. Another Jamaica may just be Indian and Chinese. You don't know. Point, we don't say that we're African because we're not just African, and saying that we're African deletes the rest of our ancestry and history.
The dichotomy is kind of different when it comes to Jamaica because like in North America, Canada, or USA, you guys are kind of have to do with a black and white thing, and you don't know where your ancestry come from. And
I get where you're coming from on that.
Culture is based on like it's like culture. Here is like hip hop music and whatever. Black culture, quote unquote. We have a country. Granted, it's run by some fucked up people, but we cultivated that thing ever since we came off the boat and we mixed with the people who are there, the Arawaks, the Taínos. We cultivated a culture that came from an African ancestry mixed with the Taínos, the Arawaks, and all that stuff, and we created this Jamaican culture. Out of many one people, I saw the motto go. Right? So when Jamaicans that you speak to out there that say, yo, I'm not African, they're not saying literally, yo, my ancestry is not African. They're saying the culture that I grew up on, cultivated on,
I get
is
that.
so far distant removed because of the atrocities that the colonizers did. So that's why we just claim Jamaicans.
Let me give you a round of applause for that one. So that was a good one, fans. That was a good one.
Before I start this, I want to say there's nothing wrong with being African, and calling Jamaicans of African descent is totally fine because we are 100% of African descent. However, saying Jamaicans are African is an erasure of over 400 years of our Caribbean heritage, as well as forgetting the massive impact that Taíno, Indian, and other races played in the ethnic identity of Jamaicans today. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I never have, but I see a lot of Jamaicans have the issue with it, so I feel like that's probably the most logical reason why someone would have an issue with being called that.
Of ourselves in other people's image.
I said, from once you have my skin color, you are an African. But most people in the Caribbean, if you tell a Jamaican, you are an African. No, me not African, I'm a Jamaican. No, you were taken from Africa. You've been a Barbados. No, I'm not I'm a Bajan. Listen, you are an African. We were all taken and scattered all across the earth. Time for you to come home, man. Time for you to come Africa.
So there's a video going around of what appears to be a Chinese Jamaican woman really coming for black African people from Jamaica, particularly those of us who live foreign, in relation to issues of blackness, Africanness, and the possession of a passport or lack thereof. People are sending me this video and ask me what I have to say about it. And the reality is, I don't have nothing to say to she. Any non-African person from Jamaica or anywhere else in the world that has a problem with Africans from Jamaica, yard or foreign, asserting our Africanness and our blackness, that a feeding problem. This is not something that we should feel the need to justify, apologize for, or even explain, especially when you consider the colonial and neo-colonial experience of African Jamaicans and how that results in the migration of African Jamaicans, as well as the extent to which the colonizer attempted to sever us from a sense of heritage and a sense of culture. That alone tell you everything what you need to know about the mentality of the smaddy will make that the video there. So when I have nothing more to say about that except to affirm the teaching of Marcus Mosiah Garvey when Africans of his time were being challenged in relation to our affirmation and assertion of racial and cultural pride. Let contrary sentiments and cross opinions go to the winds. We are entitled to our own opinions and not obligated or bound by the opinions of others. Awo. Having said that, I was listening to Running African, hosted by Sister Kabo Ma'at Keru Wadeya, and she featured a story on some events and conversations that were taking place in Jamaica on this issue. Take a listen.
You notice that there is a big conversation going on here in Jamaica right now about Mark Golding and whether or not he's black or white. And you heard a response where, we have all kinds of people, because the motto is out of many one. So this is what we're hearing now, right? That, we have Chinese Jamaican, we have Indian Jamaican, and so on. And the person who was speaking, I think it might have been Mr. Morgan himself, called out every other race Jamaican apart from African Jamaican. That in itself was telling.
So it does seem, yes, that the African Jamaicans' assertion and affirmation of our Africanness does seem to make some people very, very uncomfortable. And we should be aware of this and what agenda it serves. But beyond that, make we assert our Africanness and our blackness without fear or favor. And not make nobody make you feel shame or make you feel like you do them something wrong when you assert your blackness and your Africanness. Our heritage and our culture cannot be bound by a passport and cannot be dictated to us by anybody other than ourselves if we are guided by the principle of self-determination.
Sometimes I'll tell someone that I'm from Jamaica, and the first thing they'll say is, "Did you know that you're actually African?" I literally had no idea that Jamaica was in the continent of Africa. Like, I literally didn't know.
My family's Jamaican, as you can tell. I got all the inner workings. But I hate when they say Jamaican people ain't black. What you mean? How are we not black? If I'm not black, explain that. What was that then? What was that sound just there then? Oh, you Jamaican, you not black. Kamala, she's Jamaican Indian, she not black. Nigga, I'm Jamaican. Okay? I got all the intricacies and inner workings. I'm still black. Let's make it make sense, people. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. I got the confirmation sound right here. Come on. You know what's coming. There it is. Got the confirmation. You can't tell me I'm not black just because I'm Jamaican.
Alright guys, welcome back. So this is one of those conversations that always gets emotional because it's not just about history, it's about identity. And when people feel like the identity is being challenged or redefined, things get intense very fast. Now let's actually slow this down and look at the facts. Before any Europeans came to Jamaica, before slavery, the island was inhabited by the Taíno people, who are part of the Arawak group. These people came from South America and built full societies in the Caribbean. Jamaica had indigenous people first, but here is the part many people often don't talk about. After Christopher Columbus arrived in the late 1400s, those populations were wiped out massively through disease, slavery, and violence. Then came the transatlantic slave trade, and this is where the majority of modern Jamaicans come from. West and Central African people brought by force. Today, studies show that the majority of Jamaicans are predominantly of African descent, even if mixed with other groups. So historically speaking, both things are true. Now, let's talk about the statement that calling yourself African means you are calling yourself a prisoner of war. I understand where that idea is coming from because yes, many Africans were captured during conflicts and sold into slavery. But of course, that does not erase identity. If anything, it explains how Jamaicans ended up in the Caribbean, not who they are today. Being African is not just about how you got somewhere, it's about ancestry, culture, and lineage. Now, to be fair, the woman is also right about something. Jamaicans are not just one thing. If you've been following me closely, you can realize that the Jamaican culture is diverse. There is African ancestry, yes, but also European, indigenous, the Taíno, Arawak, Indian, Chinese. Jamaica is a melting pot. But here is where the tension comes in. Some people feel like saying we are not African is actually downplaying the biggest part of the identity. This is why Africans react strongly to this, because from the outside it feels like you are distancing yourself from us. But from the Jamaican side, they can say we are Jamaican first, not just African. So it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's national identity versus ancestral identity. And of course, we can't ignore this part. Christopher Columbus arriving in the Caribbean changed everything. Before him, indigenous societies. After him, colonization, slavery, displacements. That movement is literally what created the Caribbean as we know it today. So when we talk about identity, we are talking about something shaped by trauma, survival, and mixing. Jamaicans are overwhelmingly African in ancestry. That's what I'll just say because that's a fact. But at the same time, they are also Caribbean, mixed, and unique. Both things can exist. I don't think you have to erase African so that you can be Jamaican. And you don't have to ignore Jamaican identity to acknowledge Africa. The problem starts when one side tries to cancel the other. But I know just as Africans love Jamaicans, Jamaicans love Africans. I've actually been privileged to record very many videos on Jamaica, do some research on Jamaicans, and in the comments I normally see people say Africa is in Jamaica, and those are Jamaicans saying that. They say Africa is in Jamaica. Jamaica may not be in Africa, but Africa is in Jamaica. So guys, at the end of the day, this conversation is not about who is right or wrong. It's about understanding history, identity, and perspective. Because the Caribbean didn't come from one place. And of course, that complexity is what makes it powerful. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Jamaicans are African, or is it more complicated than that? Let's talk respectively. Remember to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch you in the next one. Respect.